Hey, everybody, we're going to be reading Wonder, pages 70 through 94. I know we're going to be reading 24 pages today, so you need to be ready to read for a long time. So go ahead and grab your book and open it up to page 70, and you should see school pictures. Today is really special because we not only get to hear from Augie's perspective, but we get to hear from another character's perspective as well. So I'm super excited to go on this journey. So we're still looking at first person point of view because we're hearing from a character's perspective, but we get to hear from a different character other than August. That's what makes this book so unique. You get to pretty much jump in characters' minds and see what they're thinking and how certain things affect them. So let's go ahead and get started with page 70. This is still in Augie's perspective. I'll let you know whenever it changes. We're still in part 1. School pictures. I don't think anyone will be shocked to learn I don't want to have my school pictures taken on October 22nd. No way. No, thank you. I stopped letting anyone take pictures of me a while ago. I guess you could call it a phobia. No, actually, it's not a phobia. It's an aversion, which is a word I just learned in Mr. Brown's class. I have an aversion to having my picture taken. There, I used it in a sentence. I thought Mom would try to get me to drop my aversion to having my picture taken for school, but she didn't. Unfortunately, while I managed to avoid having the portrait taken, I couldn't get out of being part of the class picture. Ugh. The photographer looked like he had just sucked on a lemon when he saw me. I'm sure he thought I ruined the picture. I was one of the ones in the front, sitting down. I didn't smile, not that anyone could tell if I had. The cheese touch. I noticed not too long ago that even though people are getting used to me, no one would actually touch me. I didn't realize this at first because it's not like kids go around touching each other that much in middle school anyway. But last Thursday in dance class, which is like my least favorite class, Mrs. Atanabe, we're going with that. Atanabe, the teacher, tried to make Zima Chin be my dance partner. Now, I've never actually seen someone have a panic attack before, but I have heard about it, and I'm pretty sure Zima had a panic attack at that second. She got really nervous and turned pale and literally broke into a sweat within a minute. And then she came up with some lame excuse about really having to go to the bathroom. Anyway, Mrs. Antanabe let her off the hook because she ended up not making anyone dance together. Then yesterday in my science elective, we were doing this cool mystery powder investigation where we had to classify a substance as an acid or a base. Everyone had to heat their mystery powders on a heating plate and make observations. So we were all huddled around the powders with our notebooks. Now, there are 8 kids in this elective, and 7 of them were squished together on one side of the plate, while one of them, me, had loads of room on the other side. So, of course, I noticed this, but I was hoping Mrs. Rubin wouldn't notice this because I didn't want her to say something. But of course, she did notice this, and of course, she said something. Guys, there's plenty of room on that side. Tristan, Nino, go over there, she said. So Tristan and Nino scooted over to my side. Tristan and Nino have always been okay nice to me. I want to go on record as saying that. Not super nice, like they go out of their way to hang out with me, but okay nice, like they say hello to me and talk to me like normal. And then they didn't even make a face when Miss Rubin told them to come to my side, which a lot of kids do when they think I'm not looking. Anyway, everything was going fine until Tristan's mystery powder started melting. He moved his foil off the plate just as my powder began to melt too, which is why I went to move mine off the plate. And then my hand accidentally bumped his hand for a fraction of a second. Tristan jerked his hand away so fast he dropped his foil on the floor while also knocking everyone else's foil on the heating plate. Tristan! Yelled Mrs. Rubin, but Tristan didn't even care about the spilled powder on the floor, or that he ruined the experiment. What he was most concerned about was getting to the lab sink to wash his hands as fast as possible. That's when I knew for sure that there was this thing about touching me at Beecher Prep. I think it's like the cheese touch in Diary of a Wimpy Kid. The kids in that story were afraid they'd catch the cooties if they touched the old moldy cheese on the basketball court. At Beecher Prep, I'm the old moldy cheese. For me, Halloween is the best holiday in the world. It even beats Christmas. I get to dress up in a costume. I get to wear a mask. I get to go around like every other kid with a mask, and nobody thinks I look weird. Nobody takes a second. Nobody notices me. Nobody knows me. I wish every day could be Halloween. We could we could all wear masks all the time. Then we could walk around and get to know each other before we got to see what everyone looked like under their masks. When I was little, I used to wear an astronaut helmet everywhere I went, to the playground, to the supermarket, to pick Via up from school. Even in the middle of summer, though, it was so hot my face would sweat. I think I wore it for a couple of years, but I had to stop wearing it when I had my eye surgery. I was about 7, I think. And then we couldn't find the helmet after that. Mom looked everywhere for it. She figured that it had probably ended up in Grand's attic, and she kept meaning to look for it, but by then I had gotten used to not wearing it. I had pictures of me in all my Halloween costumes. My first Halloween, I was a pumpkin. My second, I was a tiger. My third, I was Peter Pan. My dad dressed up as Captain Hook. My fourth, I was Captain Hook. My dad dressed up as Peter Pan. My fifth, I was an astronaut. My sixth, I was Obi-Wan Kenobi. My seventh, I was a clone trooper. My eighth, I was Darth Vader. My ninth, I was the Bleeding Scream, the one that had fake blood oozing out over the skull mask. This year, I'm going to be Boba Fett. Not Boba Fett, the kid in Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, but Boba Fett, the man from Star Wars Episode 5, The Emperor Strikes Back. Mom searched everywhere for the costume, but couldn't find one in my size. So she bought me a Jango Fett costume, since Jango was Boba's dad and wore the same armor, and then painted the armor green. She did some other stuff to make it look worn, too. Anyway, it looks totally real. Mom's good at costumes. In homeroom, we all talk about what we are going to be for Halloween. Charlotte was going to be Hermione from Harry Potter. Jack was going as a Wolfman. I heard that Julian was going as Jango Fett, which was a weird coincidence. I don't think he liked hearing that I was going to be Boba Fett. On the morning of Halloween, Via had this big crying meltdown about something. Via's always been so calm and cool, but this year she's had a couple of these kinds of fits. Dad was late for work and was like, Via, let's go, let's go. Usually Dad is super patient about things, but not when it comes to his being late for work. And his yelling just stressed out Via even more. And she started crying louder. So Mom told Dad to take me to school and that she'd deal with Via. Then Mom kissed me goodbye quickly before I even put on my costume and disappeared into Via's room. Augie, let's go now, said Dad. I have a meeting I can't be late for. I haven't put on my costume yet. So put it on already. 5 minutes. I'll meet you outside. I rushed to my room and started to put on the Boba Fett costume, but all of a sudden, I didn't feel like wearing it. I'm not sure why. Maybe because it had all these belts that needed to be tightened and I needed someone's help to put it on. Or maybe it was because it still smelled a little like paint. All I knew was that it was a lot of work to put the costume on. And Dad was waiting and would get super impatient if I made him late. So at the last minute, I threw on the Bleeding Scream costume from last year. It was such an easy costume, just a long black robe and a big white mask. I yelled goodbye from the door on my way out, but Mom didn't even hear me. I thought you were going as Jango Fett, said Dad when I got outside. Boba Fett. Whatever, said Dad. This is a better costume anyway. Yeah, it's cool, I answered. The Bleeding Scream. Walking through the halls that morning on my way to the locker was, I have to say, absolutely awesome. Everything was different now. I was different. While I usually walk with my head down, trying to avoid being seen, today I walked with my head up, looking around. I wanted to be seen. One kid wearing the same exact costume as mine, long white school face oozing fake red blood, high-fived me as we passed each other on the stairs. I have no idea who it was, and he had no idea who I was, and I wondered for a second if he would have ever done that if he had known it was me under the mask. I was starting to think this was going to go down as one of the most awesome days in the history of my life. But then I got to homeroom. The first costume I saw as I walked inside the door was Dark Sidious. It had one of those rubber masks that are so realistic, with a big black hood over the head and a long black robe. I knew right away it was Julian, of course. He must have changed his costume at the last minute because he thought I was coming as Django Fett. He was talking to two mummies who must have been Miles and Henry, and they were all kind of looked and they all kind of and they were all kind of looking at the door like they were waiting for someone to come through. I knew it wasn't a bleeding scream they were looking for. It was a Boba Fett. I was going to go and sit at my usual desk, but for some reason, I don't know why, I find myself walking over to a desk near them, and I could hear them talking. One of the mummies was saying, "It really does look like him." "Like this part especially," answered Julian's voice. He put his fingers on the cheeks and eyes of his dark Sidious mask. "Actually," said the mummy, "what he really looks like is one of those shrunken heads. Have you ever seen those? He looks exactly like that." "I think he looks like an orc." "Oh, yeah. If I looked like that," said the Julian voice, kind of laughing, "I swear to God I'd put a hood over my face every day." "I've thought about this a lot," said the second mummy, sounding serious, "and I really think, if I looked like him seriously, I think I'd kill myself." "You would not," answered Dark Sidious. "Yeah, for real," insisted the same mummy. "I can't imagine looking in the mirror every day and seeing myself like that. It'd be too awful. And getting stared at all the time." "Then why do you hang out with him so much?" asked Dark Sidious. "I don't know," answered the mummy. "Tushman asked me to hang out with him at the beginning of the year, and he must have told all the teachers to put us next to each other in all our classes or something." The mummy shrugged. I knew the shrug, of course. I knew the voice. I knew I wanted to run out of the class right then and there. But I stood where I was, and listened to Jack Will finish what he was saying. "I mean, the thing is, he always follows me around. What am I supposed to do?" "Just ditch him," said Julian. I don't know what Jack answered because I walked out of the class without anyone knowing I had been there. My face felt like it was on fire while I walked down the stairs. I was sweating under my costume, and I started crying. I couldn't keep it from happening. The tears were so thick in my eyes I could barely see, but I couldn't wipe them through the mask as I walked. I was looking for a little tiny spot to disappear into. I wanted a hole I could fall inside of, a little black hole that would eat me up. Names: Rat Boy, Freak, Monster, Freddy Krueger, E.T., Grossed Out. Lizard Face, Mutant. I know the names they call me. I've been in enough playgrounds to know that kids can be mean. I know. I ended up in the second floor bathroom. No one was there because first period had started and everyone was in class. I locked the door to my stall and took off my mask and just cried for I don't know how long. Then I went to the nurse's office and told her I had a stomach ache, which was true because I felt like I had been kicked in the gut. Nurse Molly called Mom and had me lie down on the sofa next to her desk. 15 minutes later, Mom was at the door. "Sweetness," she said, coming over to hug me. "Hi," I mumbled. I didn't want her to ask anything until afterward. "You have a stomach ache?" she asked, automatically putting her hand on my forehead to check for my temperature. "He said he feels like throwing up," said Nurse Molly, looking at me with very nice eyes. "I have a headache," I whispered. "I wonder if it's something you ate," said Mom, looking worried. "There's a stomach bug going around," said Nurse Molly. "Oh, geez," said Mom, her eyebrows going up as she shook her head. She helped me to my feet. "Should I call a taxi, or are you okay walking home?" "I can walk." "What a brave kid," said Nurse Molly, patting me on the back as she walked us towards the door. "If he starts throwing up or runs a temperature, you should call the doctor." "Absolutely," said Mom, shaking Nurse Molly's hand. "Thank you so much for taking care of him." "My pleasure," answered Nurse Molly, putting her hand under my chin and tilting my face up. "You take care of yourself, okay?" I nodded and mumbled, "Thank you." Mom and I hug walked the whole way home. I didn't tell her anything about what had happened, and later, when she asked me if I felt well enough to go trick-or-treating after school, I said no. This worried her, since she knew how much I usually loved trick-or-treating. I heard her say to Dad on the phone, "He doesn't even have the energy to go trick-or-treating." No, no fever at all. Well, I will if he doesn't feel better by tomorrow. I know, poor thing. Imagine his missing Halloween. I got out of going to school the next day too, which was Friday. So I had the whole weekend to think about everything. I was pretty sure I would never go back to school again. And that is the end of part 1. Part 2, Via. Far above the world, planet Earth is blue, and there's nothing I can do. David Bowie, Space Oddity. Okay, so part 1 was in Augie's perspective, and now part 2 is going to be in Via's perspective, his sister. So we get to dive into Via's brain, and remember, when it uses the word I, we, myself, it's talking about Via. So remember, this is from Via's perspective. A tour of the galaxy. August is the sun. Me and mom and dad are planets orbiting the sun. The rest of our family and friends are asteroids and comets floating around the planets orbiting the sun. The only celestial body that doesn't orbit August, the sun, is Daisy, the dog. And that's only because to her little doggy eyes, August's face doesn't look very different from any other human's face. To Daisy, all of our faces look alike, as flat and pale as the moon. I'm used to the way this universe works. I never minded it because it's all I've ever known. I've always understood that August is special and has special needs. If I was playing too loudly and he was trying to take a nap, I knew I would have to play something else because he needed his rest after some procedure or another had left him weak and in pain. If I wanted mom and dad to watch me play soccer, I knew that 9 out of 10 times they'd miss it because they were busy shuttling August to speech therapy or physical therapy or a new specialist or a surgery. Mom and dad would always say I'm the most understanding little girl in the world. I don't know about that. Just that I understand there was no point in complaining. I've seen August after his surgeries, his little face bandaged up and swollen, his tiny body full of IVs and tubes to keep him alive. After you've seen someone else going through that, it feels kind of crazy to complain over not getting the toy you had asked for or your mom missing a school play. I knew this even when I was 6 years old. No one ever told it to me. I just knew it. So I've gotten used to not complaining, and I've gotten used to not bothering mom and dad with little stuff. I've gotten used to figuring things out on my own, how to put toys together, how to organize my life so I don't miss friends' birthday parties, how to stay on top of my schoolwork so I never fall behind in class. I've never asked for help with my homework. Never. Never needed reminding to finish a project or study for a test. If I was having trouble with a subject in school, I'd go home and study it until I figured it out on my own. I taught myself how to convert fractions into decimal points by going online. I've done every school project pretty much by myself. When mom or dad ask me how things are going in school, I've always said good, even when it hasn't been so good. My worst day, worst fall, worst headache, worst bruise, worst cramp, worst mean thing anyone ever could say has always been nothing compared to what August has gone through. This isn't me being noble, by the way. It's just the way I know it is. And this is the way it's always been for me, for the little universe of us. But this year, there seems to be a shift in the cosmos. The galaxy is changing. Planets are falling out of alignment. So I love the fact that she compares her family to the solar system. August is the sun, and then everybody's the planets orbiting around the sun. So that tells you that this whole family revolves around August, and she's always kind of been pushed to the side. But she says it's not that whatever she goes through isn't anything compared to Augie, so it seems silly to complain, hey, mom and dad aren't at my soccer games, or mom and dad miss my play, even though those things are important to her. So now you're starting to see what it's like for Via to have a brother that has these special needs. Let's see what her life has been like lately. Before August. I honestly don't remember my life before August came into it. I look at pictures of me as a baby and I see mom and dad smiling so happily holding me. I can't believe how much younger they looked back then. Dad was this hipster dude and mom was this cute Brazilian fashionista. There's one shot of me at my third birthday. Dad's right behind me while Mom's holding the cake with 3 lit candles. And in the back of us was Tata, Papa, Grands, Uncle Ben, Uncle Kate, and Uncle Poe. Everyone's looking at me, and I'm looking at the cake. You can see in that picture how I really was the first child, first grandchild, first niece. I don't remember what it felt like, of course, but I can see it plain as can be in the picture. I don't remember the day they brought August home from the hospital. I don't remember what I said or did or felt when I saw him for the first time, though everyone has a story about it. Apparently, I just looked at him for a long time without saying anything at all, and then finally I said, "It doesn't look like Lily." That was the name of a dog Grands had given me when Mom was pregnant so I could practice being a big sister. It was one of those dolls that are incredibly lifelike, and I'd carried it everywhere for months, changing its diaper, feeding it. I'm told I even made a baby sling for it. The story goes that after my initial reaction to August, it only took a few minutes, according to Grands, or a few days, according to Mom, before I was all over him, kissing him, cuddling him, baby talking to him. After that, I never so much as touched or mentioned Lily again. Seeing August. I never used to see August the way other people saw him. I know he didn't look exactly normal, but I really didn't understand why strangers seemed so shocked when they saw him. Horrified, sickened, scared. There are so many words I can use to describe the looks on people's faces, and for a long time I didn't get it. I'd just get mad. Mad when they stared, mad when they looked away. "What the heck are you looking at?" I'd say to people, even grown-ups. Then, when I was about 11, I went to stay with Grands in Montauk for 4 weeks while August was having his big jaw surgery. This was the longest I'd ever been away from home, and I have to say it was so amazing to suddenly be free of all the stuff that made me so mad. No one stared at Grands and me when we went to town to buy groceries. No one pointed at us. No one even noticed us. Grands was one of those grandmothers who'd do everything with their grandkids. She'd run into the ocean if I asked her to, even if she had nice clothes on. She would let me play with her makeup and didn't mind if I used it on her face to practice my face painting skills. She'd take me for ice cream even if we hadn't eaten dinner yet. She'd draw chalk horses on the sidewalk in front of her house. One night while we were walking back from town, I told her I wish I could live with her forever. I was so happy there. I think it might have been the best time of my life. Coming home after 4 weeks felt very strange at first. I remember very vividly stepping through the door and seeing August run over to welcome me home. And for this tiny fraction of a moment, I saw him not the way I've always seen him, but the way other people see him. It was only a flash, an instant, while he hugged me, so happy that I was home. But it surprised me because I had never seen him like that before. And I had never felt what I was feeling before either, a feeling I hated myself for having the moment I had it. But as he was kissing me with all his heart, all I could see was the drooling coming down his chin. And suddenly there I was, like all those people who would stare or look away. Horrified, sickened, scared. Thankfully, that lasted for a second. The moment I heard August laugh, his raspy little laugh, it was over. Everything was back the way it had been before. But it had opened a door for me, a little peephole. And on the other side of the peephole, there were 2 Augusts, the one I saw blindly and the other that people saw. I think the only person in the world I could have told any of this to was my Grands, but I didn't. It was too hard to explain over the phone. I thought maybe when she'd come for Thanksgiving, I'd tell her what I felt. But just 2 months after I stayed with her in Montauk, my beautiful Grands died. It was so completely out of the blue. Apparently, she had checked herself into the hospital because she was feeling nauseous. Mom and I drove over to see her, but it's a 3-hour drive from where we live. And by the time we got to the hospital, Grands was gone. A heart attack, they told us, just like that. It's so strange how one day you can be on this earth and the next day not. Where did she go? Will I really ever see her again, or is that a fairy tale? You see movies and TV shows where people receive horrific news in hospitals. But for us, with all of our many trips to the hospital with August, there had always been good outcomes. What I remember the most from the day Grands died, is Mom literally crumbling to the floor in slow, heavy, heaving sobs, holding her stomach like someone had just punched her. I've never, ever seen my mom like that. Never heard sounds like that come out of her. Even though all of August's surgeries, Mom always put on a brave face. On my last day in Montauk, Grands and I watched the sunset on the beach. We had taken a blanket to sit on, but it had gotten chilly, so we wrapped it around us and cuddled and talked until there wasn't even a slither of sun left over the ocean. And then Grands told me she had a secret to tell me. She loved me more than anyone else in the world. Even August? I had asked. She smiled and stroked my hair like she was thinking about what to say. I love Augie very, very much, she said softly. I can still remember her Portuguese accent, the way she rolled her R's. But he has many angels looking out for him already, Via. And I want you to know that you have me looking out for you. Okay, Mina Querida? I want you to know that you are number one for me. You are my... She looked out at the ocean and spread her hands out like she was trying to smooth out the waves. You're my everything. You understand me, Via? Tú es muy todo. I understood her, and I knew why she said it was a secret. Grandmothers aren't supposed to have favorites. Everyone knows that. But after she died, I held on to that secret and let it cover me like a blanket. I love that. I held on to that secret and let it cover me like a blanket. It ended with a simile. So that secret is compared to a blanket and how it can cover her. August through the peephole. His eyes are about an inch below where they should be on his face, almost to halfway down his cheeks. They slant downward at an extreme angle, almost like diagonal slits that someone cut into his face. And the left one is noticeably lower than the right one. They bulge outward because his eye cavities are too shallow to accommodate them. The top eyelids are always halfway closed, like he's on the verge of sleeping. The lower eyelids sag so much they almost look like a piece of invisible string is pulling them downward. You can see the red part on the inside, like they're almost inside out. He doesn't have eyebrows or eyelashes. His nose is disproportionately big for his face and kind of fleshy. His head is pinched in on the sides where the ears should be, like someone used giant pliers and crushed the middle part of his face. He doesn't have cheekbones. There are deep creases running down both sides of his nose to his mouth, which gives him a waxy appearance. Sometimes people assume he's been burned in a fire. His features look like they've been melted, like the drippings of the side of a candle. Another simile. Several surgeries to correct his lip have left a few scars around his mouth, the most noticeable one being a jagged gash running from the middle of his upper lip to his nose. His upper teeth are small and splay out. He has a severe overbite and extreme undersized jawbone. He has a very small chin. When he was very little, before a piece of his hip bone was surgically implanted into his lower jaw, he really had no chin at all. His tongue would just hang out of his mouth with nothing underneath it to block it. Thankfully, it's better now. He can eat, at least. When he was younger, he had a feeding tube. And he can talk, and he's learning to keep his tongue inside his mouth, though it took him several years to master. He's also learned to control the drool that used to run down his neck. These are considered miracles. When he was a baby, the doctor didn't think he'd live. He can hear, too. Most kids born with these types of birth defects have problems with their middle ears that prevent them from hearing. But so far, August can hear well enough through his tiny cauliflower-shaped ears. The doctors think that eventually he'll need to wear hearing aids, though. August hates the thought of this. He thinks the hearing aids will get noticed too much. I don't tell him that the hearing aids would be the least of his problems, but of course, I'm sure he already knows this. Then again, I'm not really sure what August knows or doesn't know, what he understands and doesn't understand. Does August see how other people see him? Or has he gotten so good at pretending not to see that it doesn't bother him? Or does it bother him? When he looks in the mirror, does he see the Augie mom and dad see? Or does he see the Augie everyone else sees? Or is there another August that he sees? Someone in his dreams behind this misshapen head and face? Sometimes when I look at Grands, I could see the pretty girl she used to be underneath the wrinkles. I could see the girl from from Ipanema. Ipanema? I don't know if that's right. Ipanema inside the old lady walk. Does August see himself as he might have looked without the single gene that caused the catastrophic of his face? I wish I could ask him this stuff. Wait, does August see himself as he might have looked without that single gene that caused the catastrophe of his face? That one's right. I wish I could ask him this stuff. I wish he would tell me how he feels. He used to be easier to read before the surgeries. You knew that when his eyes squinted, he was happy. When his mouth went straight, he was being mischievous. When his cheeks trembled, he was about to cry. He looks better now, no doubt about that. But the signs that used to gauge his moods are all gone. There are new ones, of course. Mom and Dad can read every single one. But I'm having trouble keeping up, and there's a part of me that doesn't want to keep trying. Why can't he just say what he's feeling like everybody else? He doesn't have a trach tube in his mouth anymore that keeps him from talking. His jaw's not wired shut. He's 10 years old. He can use his words. But we circle around him like he's still the baby he used to be. We change plans, go to plan B, interrupt conversations, go back on our promises, depending on his moods, his whims, his needs. That was fine when he was little, but he needs to grow up now. We need to let him, help him, make him grow up. Here's what I think. We've all spent so much time trying to make August think he's normal that he actually thinks he's normal. And the problem is, he's not. High school. What I've always loved most about middle school was that it was separate and different from home. I could go there and be Olivia Pullman, not Via, which is my name at home. Via was what they called me in elementary school, too. Back then, everyone knew about us, of course. Mom used to pick me up after school, and August was always in the stroller. There weren't a lot of people who were equipped to babysit for Augie, so Mom and Dad brought him to all my class plays and concerts and recitals, all the school functions, the bake sales, and the book fairs. My friends knew him. My friends' parents knew him. My teachers knew him. The janitor knew him. "Hey, how you doing, Augie?" he'd always say, and give August a high five. August was something of a fixture at PS 22. But in the middle school, a lot of people didn't know about August. My old friends did, of course, but my new friends didn't. Or if they knew, it wasn't necessarily the first thing they knew about me. Maybe it was the second or third thing they'd hear about me. "Olivia? Yeah, she's nice. Did you hear she has a brother who's deformed?" I always hated that word, but I knew it was how people described Augie. And I knew those kinds of conversations probably happened all the time out of earshot. Every time I left the room at a party or bumped into a group of friends at the pizza place. And that's okay. I'm always going to be the sister of a kid with a birth defect. That's not the issue. I just don't always want to be defined that way. The best thing about high school is that hardly anyone knows me at all, except Miranda and Ella, of course, and they know not to go around talking about it. Miranda, Ella, and I have known each other since the first grade. What's so nice is we never had to explain things to one another. When I decided I wanted them to call me Olivia instead of Via, they got it without my having to explain. They've known August since he was a little baby. When we were little, our favorite thing to do was play dress up with Augie. Load him up with feather boas and big hats and Hannah Montana wigs. He used to love it, of course, and we thought he was adorable and cute in his own way. Ella said he reminded her of E.T. She didn't say this to be mean, of course, though maybe it was a little bit mean. The truth is, there's a scene in the movie where Drew Barrymore dresses E.T. in a blonde wig, and that was a ringer for Augie in our Miley Cyrus heyday. Throughout middle school, Miranda, Ella, and I pretty much made our own little group. Somewhere between super popular and well-liked. Not brainy, not jocks, not rich, not druggies, not mean, not goody-goody, not huge, not fat, not flat. I don't know if the three of us found each other because we are so alike in so many ways, or that because we found each other, we'd become so alike in so many ways. We were so happy when we all got into Faulkner High School. It was such a long shot that all three of us would be accepted, especially when no one else from our middle school was. I remember how we screamed into our phones the day we got our acceptance letters. This is why I haven't understood what's been going on with us lately. now that we're actually in high school. It's nothing like how I thought it would be. Major Tom. Out of the three of us, Miranda has always had almost always been the sweetest to August, hugging him and playing with him long after Ella and I'd move on to playing something else. Even as we got older, Miranda always made sure to try to include August in our conversations. Ask him how he was doing, talk to him about Avatar or Star Wars or Bone or something she knew he liked. It was Miranda who had given Augie the astronaut helmet he wore practically every day of the year when he was 5 or 6. She would call him Major Tom, and they would sing Space Oddity by David Bowie together. It was their little thing. They knew all the words and would blast it on the iPod and sing the song out loud. Since Miranda's always been really good about calling us as soon as she got home from summer camp, I was a little surprised when I didn't hear from her. I even texted her and she didn't reply. I figured maybe she had ended up staying in the camp longer now that she was a counselor. Maybe she met a cute guy. Then I realized from her Facebook wall that she had actually been back home for full 2 weeks. So I sent her an IM and we chatted online a bit, but she didn't give me a reason for not calling, which I thought was bizarre. Miranda had always been a little flaky, so I figured that's all it was. We made plans to meet downtown, but then I had to cancel because we were driving out to visit Tata and Papa for the weekend. So I ended up not seeing either Miranda or Ella until the first day of school. And I have to admit, I was shocked. Miranda looked so different. Her hair was cut in this super cute bob that she had dyed bright pink, of all things. And she was wearing a striped tube top that A, seemed way inappropriate for school, and B, was totally not her usual style. Miranda had always been such a prude about clothes, and here she was, all pink-haired and tube-topped. But it wasn't just the way she looked that was different. She was acting differently, too. I can't say she wasn't nice because she was, but she seemed kind of distant, like I was a casual friend. It was the weirdest thing in the world. At lunch, the three of us sat together like we always used to, but the dynamics had shifted. It was obvious to me that Ella and Miranda had gotten together a few times during the summer without me, though they had never actually said that. I pretended not to be at all upset while we talked. Wait. Sorry, I lost my place. Though I could feel my face getting hot, my face and my smile being fake. Although Ella wasn't as over the top as Miranda, I noticed a change in her usual style, too. It's like they had talked to each other beforehand about redoing their image at the new school, but hadn't bothered to clue me in. I admit, I had always thought I was above this kind of typical teenage pettiness, but I felt a lump in my throat throughout lunch. My voice quivered as I said, "See you later," when the bell rang.